It's funny, the things you remember. Sometimes it's the quiet moments that stick with you more than the big explosions. Like walking into the break room now and seeing that old espresso machine, gleaming under the fluorescent lights, steam gently hissing. Or the way the team meetings feel, not like a performance, but like a real conversation, people actually listening to each other. It's a different vibe around here these days, lighter, more focused. And that, in a lot of ways, is thanks to a truly terrible cup of coffee and a very specific article in our union contract. But to understand how we got here, how a 17-year veteran found himself running a department he never thought he'd lead, and how a whole company recalibrated its understanding of respect, we have to go back a little over a year. Back to when our longtime department head, Marcus, decided to retire. Marcus had been running engineering at Cascade Industrial Manufacturing in Indianapolis since before I even started. He knew this plant, knew the machines, knew the people. When he announced he was leaving, he pulled me aside, told me he'd put my name forward for the job. Said I'd earned it. I'd worked my way up from a junior technician, through night school certifications and every dirty, complicated problem nobody else wanted to touch. For the last 8 years, I was the guy they called at 3 in the morning when a critical machine went down. The guy who knew its quirks, the guy who'd saved the company millions. I figured I had a shot. I mean, I was already doing half the job anyway. Instead, corporate hired from the outside. Victoria Sterling. Mid-40s, an MBA, a background in management consulting. 0 manufacturing experience. 0 time spent on a production floor. Her announcement email was all about fresh perspectives and innovative leadership. Marcus, God bless him, forwarded it to me with a single, private message: "Sorry, kiddo. Politics won." I knew what he meant. Corporate liked bringing in outsiders, no baggage, no loyalties to the existing staff. It made a certain kind of sense, I guess, but it also meant putting someone who didn't know a drill from a screwdriver in charge of an engineering department that built precision components for aerospace contractors. We're talking about tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. One mistake, and lives could literally be on the line. Victoria arrived the following Monday. Her first all-hands meeting was a masterclass in corporate speak. 45 minutes about synergy and cross-functional optimization. She used the word streamline 11 times. I counted. Not once did she mention quality control or the specific challenges of precision manufacturing. Not once did she ask about current projects or what we actually needed. When she opened it up for questions, Liam Cooper, one of our sharpest junior engineers, raised his hand. He asked about the recurring calibration issues with the CNC machines in Section Gamma. A real, practical problem. Victoria just blinked, smiled that practiced, empty smile, and said she looked forward to diving into the details and empowering her people to bring solutions to the table. Translation: I have no idea what you're talking about. Liam looked at me, and I just shrugged. She was the boss. The org chart said so. The first few weeks were a slow burn. She redecorated Marcus's old office, replacing his technical manuals with management bestsellers, all about leadership and disruption. My one-on-one with her was Thursday afternoon. I expected to talk about department priorities, ongoing projects. Instead, she spent 20 minutes on her leadership philosophy, drawing circles and arrows on her whiteboard, words like synergy and alignment. Then she asked me to describe my role in one sentence. I keep this facility running when things go wrong. She scribbled something in her notebook, didn't ask a single follow-up question. No, what kind of things, or how often, or what have you learned? Just a nod and I appreciate your dedication. I left that meeting knowing exactly what kind of boss she was going to be. The kind who confuses confidence with competence. Then week 2 hit. She started small. Moved our weekly engineering review from Tuesday morning to Friday afternoon, knowing full well half the team would be on the production floor doing end-of-week quality checks. I tried to explain the conflict, suggested alternatives. I appreciate your feedback, she said, but the new time works better for my calendar. Her calendar. Not the team's. Then she reorganized our shared drive. 17 years of documentation, gone, replaced by a new folder structure that made sense to someone who'd never actually had to find anything in a hurry. It took me 3 hours to locate tolerance specs for the Harrison contract. I politely suggested discussing major changes before implementing them. Another practiced smile. Sometimes change is uncomfortable, she said. We need to trust the process. Trust the process. Like finding critical documentation was some kind of personal growth exercise, not a job requirement. The next incident was a CNC machine in section beta throwing an error code nobody recognized. Standard procedure was to call me. I'd seen every error that machine could produce. But Victoria intercepted the call. Said she wanted to handle it herself, learn the operation from the ground up. 3 hours later, the machine was still down. Production was backing up. The shift supervisor finally called me directly. I found Victoria in front of the machine, flipping through the operator's manual like she was looking for a recipe. It was a thermal sensor misread, common when humidity changes rapidly. For minutes to recalibrate if you know what you're doing. I fixed it. Didn't say a word, just fixed it and walked away. An email landed in my inbox later that afternoon, appreciated your assistance, but all technical issues should be routed through my office first. Chain of command is important. I forwarded that email to my personal account. Started building a file. Week 3, she went after the espresso machine. Now, this is important. Our engineering department had a proper, commercial-grade espresso machine. Marcus had bought it with departmental funds years ago. His philosophy was simple: if his people were pulling 60-hour weeks, they deserved decent coffee. It worked. Morale stayed high even during the brutal seasons. People bonded over it, shared ideas. Victoria, though, decided it was an unnecessary luxury. Said it created inequality because other departments didn't have one. Announced she was having it removed and replaced with a standard drip coffee maker, like everyone else. Nobody said anything in the meeting. But afterward, the break room was full of people just standing there, looking at it like a fallen soldier. Liam summed it up: death by 1,000 cuts. The machine was gone by Monday. The drip coffee maker arrived Tuesday. It made coffee that tasted like sadness and disappointment. That afternoon, Frank Miller, a 30-year veteran from maintenance, pulled me aside. He'd moved the espresso machine to a storage closet in section beta. I'll keep it maintained, he said. Until things change. I told him it was probably unnecessary. He just smiled. Seen a lot of bosses come and go, Ethan. The good ones stay, the bad ones don't. Either way, the coffee machine will be there when things settle down. Week 4. This was her big move. Thursday morning, I was at my desk, reviewing stress analysis for a landing gear component. She stopped by. That practice smile already in place. Ethan, she chirped. I'm having my first leadership team meeting this afternoon. Directors from sales, operations, finance. Really important for making a good impression. Big opportunity to set the tone for my tenure here. I looked up from my screen, waiting. I need someone to handle the coffee and refreshments. I processed what she'd said. Made sure I'd heard it correctly. I'm in the middle of a structural analysis for the Morrison contract. Due tomorrow. She tilted her head, that dismissive gesture that said my concerns were noted but utterly irrelevant. I'm sure it can wait a few hours. This is important. You want me to get coffee and set up the conference room? Make sure everything looks professional. Maybe pick up some pastries from that bakery downtown. Then she added, first impressions matter with this group. I'm a senior engineer, I said, a slight pause, and I'm your department head. She said it like she was explaining something to a child. Like the hierarchy should automatically override everything else. We all pitch in around here. That's what teamwork looks like. I sat there for a moment. 17 years at this company. Multi-million-dollar savings last year. 3 patents. Trained half the current engineering staff. Saved contracts worth tens of millions. And this woman wanted me to be her caterer. But here's the thing about working in a union shop. We have rules. Specific rules. Rules that management tends to forget about until someone reminds them. Rules that exist precisely because people like Victoria have always existed, treating skilled workers like servants. Sure, I said, flashing her my own practice smile. I'd be happy to help. Her expression flickered. Surprise, maybe. She'd expected resistance. Expected me to push back so she could assert dominance. No resistance meant she'd won. That's what she thought. Great. Meetings at 2. Make sure everything's ready by 1:30. She walked away, looking satisfied. I waited until she was back in her office, then pulled up the union contract on my computer. Article 7, Section 4, Subsection B. I'd read this document cover to cover when I was first hired. Read it again every time contract negotiations came up. Most people skimmed the boring parts. I memorized them. This section covered job classifications and duty assignments. Specifically, it addressed situations where employees were asked to perform duties outside their normal classification. The language was clear: any employee assigned to perform courier, delivery, or service duties outside their primary job classification shall be compensated at twice the standard hourly rate for all time spent on such duties, including travel time. It was a relic from the 70s, when management would ask skilled workers to run errands during labor shortages. The union made it expensive to misuse technical staff. Nobody had invoked it in years, but it was still there. Still enforceable. Still legally binding. I printed the page, highlighted the subsection. Then I started planning. If Victoria wanted coffee, she was going to get coffee. Just not the way she expected. First, I called Carl in the motor pool. Carl had been running fleet operations for 30 years. Knew every loophole. Need a vehicle for a department errand, I said. Official business. Carl didn't ask questions. What kind of errand? He asked. Coffee run. Boss's orders. He chuckled. The new one? Heard she's a piece of work. She has high standards, I said. Carl signed out a company truck to my name. White Ford F-150. Official vehicle. Official business. All documented with timestamps and authorization codes. Next, research. She wanted coffee for an important meeting. She hadn't specified where. Hadn't specified a budget. Hadn't specified a timeline beyond ready by 1:30. Those were her mistakes. There's a specialty coffee roaster about 2 hours east of Indianapolis, in Columbus, Ohio. Blackwell Brothers. They roast their own beans, sourced directly from small farms. Their pour-over is legendary. I'd been there once. Knew they did corporate catering. I called ahead, explained I needed premium coffee service for an executive meeting. 8 people, afternoon. Asked about their catering options. They could prepare a selection of single-origin pour-overs, provide ceramic cups, and artisan pastries from their partner bakery. Total cost for the premium package, $480. Perfect. I gave them the company credit card number. The one Victoria had issued to me the previous week for departmental supplies. Use it for anything work-related, she'd said. Her words. Not mine. Then I logged my departure time in the company system, 9:47 a.m. Purpose, procurement of refreshments per department head request. Everything documented. Everything official. Everything traceable. The drive east was pleasant. Late spring in Indiana, green fields, blue sky. I kept the radio on an oldies station and thought about all the ways this could play out. Best case, Victoria gets embarrassed in front of her director colleagues. Corporate gets involved. She thinks twice. Worst case, she tries to discipline me. I file a grievance with the union, and we spend 6 months in arbitration while the whole company watches her explain why she sent her senior engineer to fetch coffee. Either way, I wasn't losing. Blackwell Brothers was everything I remembered. The smell of fresh roasted beans. David Chin, the owner, came out personally to help. "You're from Cascade?" he asked. "We've done corporate events, but usually it's office managers or executive assistants, not engineers." "Special situation," I said. He nodded. "Some bosses forget who keeps the lights on." He showed me the selection. 3 single-origin options with detailed tasting notes. Ethiopian Yirgacheffe, Colombian Huila, Guatemalan Antigua. Each carafe held enough for 8 servings. Professional presentation. The pastries were equally impressive. Croissants, danishes, biscotti. All made that morning. All arranged on wooden serving boards with branded napkins. "This is a lot of effort for a coffee run," David observed. "First impressions matter," I quoted. He gave me a knowing look. "Well, I hope she appreciates it." "I'm sure she will," I said. The drive back took longer. Construction on I-70 added 40 minutes. An accident near exit 105 added another 20. I didn't rush. Kept the thermal carafes secure in the passenger seat. Stopped once for gas, documented the receipt. Took my time at the rest stop. Bought a sandwich. Ate it slowly, watching trucks pass on the highway. I pulled into the Cascade parking lot at 3:23 p.m. Victoria's meeting had started at 2. I'd been gone for 5 hours and 36 minutes. The truck barely stopped before my phone started buzzing. 3 missed calls from Victoria. 2 from HR. 1 from Michael Hayes, the operations director. Several text messages ranging from "Where are you?" to "This is unacceptable" to "Call me immediately." I gathered the coffee supplies and walked into the building like nothing was wrong. Badged in. Nodded at security. Took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The conference room was visible through the glass walls as I approached. 8 people sitting around the table, Victoria at the head, face red, gesturing at something on her laptop. The directors looked uncomfortable. The kind of uncomfortable that comes from watching someone melt down in real time. I could see empty water glasses. The standard company coffee pot sat unused in the corner. They'd been waiting for hours. I knocked on the glass door, held up a Blackwell Brothers carafe like a prize. Victoria's head snapped toward me. For a second, I thought she might actually throw something. Her face went from red to purple. The directors all turned to stare. "Where have you been?" she hissed. "Getting coffee," I said. "Like you asked." I opened the door and started setting up the service station in the corner. Ceramic cups arranged neatly. Pastries on the wooden serving board. 3 different single-origin options with tasting notes printed on small cards. Professional presentation. Exactly what she had asked for. The directors stared. Michael Hayes looked like he was trying not to laugh. Eleanor Vance from finance had her hand over her mouth. Victoria stood up so fast her chair rolled backward and hit the wall. That meeting request was for 1:30. It is almost 3:30. I had to start this meeting with nothing. Do you understand how embarrassing that was? Do you understand how this made me look? "I'm sorry for the inconvenience," I said calmly. "I was fulfilling your request to obtain coffee and refreshments." The nearest facility that met professional standards for an executive meeting was located approximately 2 hours east of here. I prioritized quality, as you requested. Her eyes narrowed. Quality? You could have gone to the coffee shop 5 minutes away. You said you wanted to make a good impression, I said, meeting her gaze. You said first impressions matter. I assumed that meant you wanted the best available option, not the most convenient one. Eleanor Vance spoke up, her voice a little too casual. Actually, these pastries are excellent. Where did you say this place was? Blackwell Brothers, I replied. About 2 hours east. They source directly from small farms. Roast everything on site. Victoria cut in. This is not relevant to the discussion. Michael Hayes leaned back in his chair. I don't know, Victoria. Seems pretty relevant to me. You asked him to get coffee. He got coffee. Exceptional coffee, from the looks of it. This is insubordination. You deliberately sabotaged my meeting. I set down the last plate, arranged the napkins, made sure everything was perfectly positioned. Then I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the printed union contract page. Actually, I followed your instructions exactly. However, I do want to make you aware of Article 7, Section 4, Subsection B of our collective bargaining agreement. I handed her the paper. She looked at it like I'd handed her a live snake. Didn't take it, just stared. It states that any employee assigned courier or service duties outside their primary job classification is entitled to compensation at twice the standard hourly rate, including travel time. My standard hourly rate is $64, I continued. I was performing courier duties for 5 hours and 36 minutes. That's $358 at base rate, or $716 at the contractual double time rate. I paused. Additionally, I incurred $480 in refreshment costs, which I charged to the departmental account, as authorized by you. The room was silent. Michael Hayes had stopped pretending not to laugh and was openly grinning. Eleanor Vance was taking notes. You charged $700 for coffee? Victoria's voice had gone shrill. The kind of voice that makes people look away out of secondhand embarrassment. I obtained premium catering services for an executive meeting as instructed, I stated. I followed proper procurement procedures and documented all expenses. I also ensured that my compensation for performing non-engineering duties was handled according to our legally binding union contract. I let the silence build. Would you like me to invoice HR directly, or should I submit through the normal timesheet process? Victoria looked at the other directors. They looked away. Nobody wanted to be associated with this. This is ridiculous. You're not getting double time for a coffee run. That's fine, I said. We can address it through the grievance process. I'm sure the union steward would be interested in reviewing a case where management explicitly assigned courier duties to a classified engineer and then refused contractual compensation. Michael Hayes spoke up. Victoria, can we take a 5-minute break? I think we should let this get sorted out privately. She nodded stiffly. The directors filed out. A few of them grabbed pastries on the way. One commented quietly that the croissants looked amazing. Another poured himself a cup of the Ethiopian and raised his eyebrows appreciatively. Eleanor stopped to examine the coffee selection. Blackwell Brothers. Nice choice. These guys are excellent. I've been to their tasting room. Thanks, I said. Figured if I was making the trip, might as well do it right. Victoria and I were alone. She stood behind her chair, gripping the back like she needed something to hold on to. You think you're clever? I think I followed instructions. You deliberately made me look foolish in front of my peers. You asked a senior engineer to fetch coffee, I countered. The foolishness was built into the request. I just provided documentation. Her jaw tightened. This isn't over. The grievance goes through regardless, I said. That's $716 you owe me. I walked out before she could respond. Gary Jenkins, our union steward, found me at my desk 20 minutes later. He'd been with Cascade almost as long as I had, knew the contract inside and out. Heard you had an interesting afternoon, he said, grinning. News travels fast. He perched on the corner of my desk. Carl called me. Said you requisitioned a truck for a coffee run and came back 4 hours later with gourmet espresso. Said it was the best use of company resources he'd seen in years. 5 hours and 36 minutes, actually, I corrected. Gary's grin widened. Article 7, Section 4, Subsection B. You know your contract. That provision hasn't been invoked since 1989. Guy named Pete Morales got sent to pick up dry cleaning for his supervisor. Billed 8 hours of double time because he drove to a cleaner in Dayton instead of using the one across the street. Management never assigned personal errands to union members again. Legend. He handed me a form. File this. I'll make sure it gets processed correctly. Also, between us, about 6 other people in the department have approached me about similar incidents. Victoria's been using engineers as personal assistants since she got here. Picking up lunch, running documents. One guy got sent for her dry cleaning 3 times in 2 weeks. You're just the first one to fight back. I filled out the form, signed it, dated it, handed it back. She's going to escalate this, probably. He shrugged. Corporate doesn't like union grievances. Bad for metrics. Bad for executive reviews. Last department head who racked up multiple grievances got quietly transferred to a facility in Oklahoma without air conditioning. The next few weeks were a lesson in Cold War dynamics. Victoria didn't speak to me directly. Everything came through email, meticulously worded, carbon copied to HR. She requested status updates on projects that didn't need updates. Asked for documentation on procedures I'd been performing successfully for years. Scheduled performance check-ins with vague agendas and ominous subject lines. The first check-in was the Monday after the coffee incident. She had a list of concerns: my attitude, my communication style, my resistance to change. She read them off like she was presenting evidence at a trial. I sat there and let her finish. Then I asked if she had any concerns about my actual work product, the quality of my engineering, the accuracy of my analyses, the effectiveness of my solutions. She paused. Said she was focused on behavioral issues at this time. I told her I'd take her feedback under advisement, asked if there was anything else. She said no. I left. That afternoon, I sent her an email summarizing our conversation, CC'd HR, noted that no performance concerns related to engineering quality had been raised, and asked her to confirm the summary was accurate. She never responded, but she also never brought up that meeting again. I responded to everything she sent me on time, in writing, with excessive detail. She wanted a status update on the Morrison contract? A 14-page report with appendices covering stress analysis methodology, tolerance specifications, supplier communications, and a timeline showing I was ahead of schedule. She wanted documentation on the calibration process for section gamma? A complete procedural manual, plus photographs, plus a comparison analysis with industry standards showing our process exceeded baseline requirements by 18%. Every email ended the same way: please let me know if you need any additional information. I'm happy to provide clarification. Liam started calling it the bureaucratic Aikido approach. Make compliance into a weapon. Meanwhile, Victoria was struggling with the actual job. First disaster, she approved a vendor change for precision fasteners without consulting anyone. Saved 12% on unit costs. Also resulted in 4 rejected batches because the new fasteners didn't meet aerospace certification requirements. Cost us $90,000 in rework and delayed delivery penalties. Second disaster, she restructured the project management workflow. Added 3 new approval layers. Increased average project timelines by 11%. Third disaster, she implemented a new performance metric system based on something from a management seminar. Engineers started getting evaluated on criteria that had nothing to do with engineering quality. 2 junior engineers started updating their resumes. One of them, a talented kid named Daniel, who'd been with us 3 years, actually quit. Took a job with a competitor. We lost 2 years of training investment because Victoria wanted to measure synergy. Fourth disaster, she scheduled a critical client presentation without checking the engineering team's availability. I was in the middle of a compliance audit. Liam was handling a machine failure in section Gamma. The presentation happened with no technical staff present. The client asked questions nobody could answer. They walked away with serious concerns about our capabilities. And through all of it, I just kept doing my job, quietly, effectively, documenting everything. The grievance hearing happened 6 weeks after the coffee incident. Standard process. Me, Gary, Victoria, an HR representative named Sarah Evans, and a neutral arbitrator from the Union Management Committee, Arthur Campbell. He was a retired labor lawyer, done hundreds of these hearings, known for being fair but thorough. Victoria's argument was predictable. I had deliberately misinterpreted her request. A reasonable person would have understood she meant local coffee, not a 4-hour road trip. My actions constituted insubordination and malicious compliance. She brought documentation, emails showing I'd been a difficult employee, performance concerns she'd noted, a written statement arguing that my behavior was part of a pattern of resistance to her leadership. She even had a timeline showing how long it should have taken to get coffee from nearby vendors. Arthur reviewed everything carefully, took notes, asked clarifying questions. My counterargument was simpler. She assigned a classified engineer to perform courier duties. The contract specifies compensation rates for such assignments. The distance traveled was a direct result of her failure to provide specific parameters. I followed her instructions exactly as given. I brought documentation, too, the union contract with the relevant section highlighted, the fleet requisition form showing official authorization, the credit card receipt showing proper procurement procedures, the time log showing my departure and return times, plus testimonials from 3 coworkers about similar errand requests they'd received. Gary presented the union's position, cited the Pete Morales precedent from 1989, quoted the exact contract language, pointed out that the provision existed specifically to prevent this kind of situation. Arthur reviewed everything, then turned to Victoria. Ms. Sterling, did you provide Mr. Graham with specific instructions regarding where to obtain the coffee? I said to get coffee and pastries, but no specific vendor, no location, no budget constraints, she said. I expected him to use common sense. The arbitrator nodded, made a note. Then to me, Mr. Graham, did you have any reason to believe Ms. Sterling intended for you to spend 5 hours on this errand? She said it was an important meeting with directors. She emphasized making a good impression. She said, first impressions matter. I obtained what I judged to be the highest quality option available given those parameters. Another note. Arthur looked at both of us. The contract language is clear. Courier duties performed by classified personnel are compensable at double time rates. The assignment was made without parameters. The employee followed the assignment as given. The grievance is sustained. The award is $716 to be processed through standard payroll within 2 pay periods. Victoria's face went white. Sarah from HR was already making notes. I would also recommend that department management establish clear protocols for any future non-standard duty assignments to avoid similar disputes. Meeting adjourned. Gary shook my hand outside the conference room. First sustained Article 7 grievance in 34 years. You're officially a legend. The fallout came faster than expected. Michael Hayes, the operations director who'd been in that conference room during the coffee incident, mentioned the situation during an executive meeting the following week. Described what he'd seen. The shouting, the contract dispute, the $700 coffee service, the way the directors had quietly enjoyed the excellent pastries while watching their colleague implode. Corporate launched a quiet review of Victoria's department management. They found the fastener disaster, the project delays, the morale issues, the grievance, 6 complaints from other engineers about being used as personal assistants, Daniel's resignation letter citing toxic management. 2 months after the arbitration, Victoria announced she was leaving Cascade to pursue other opportunities. Standard corporate language, but everyone knew what it meant. She'd been given the choice to resign gracefully or be managed out messily. Her last day was a Friday. She packed her office without saying goodbye to anyone. I watched her carry a box to her car around 4:30. She didn't look back. The following Monday felt different. Lighter. People actually smiled in the hallways. Someone brought donuts to the morning meeting. Liam made a joke about servant leadership, and nobody flinched. The interim department head was Charlotte Davies. 11 years with Cascade, worked her way up from quality control. Actually knew what a tolerance specification was. Actually understood why certain things mattered. First thing she did was call a department meeting. Not to talk about synergy, but to ask what was broken and what we needed to fix it. People actually spoke up: the meeting schedule, the shared drive organization, the performance metrics, the approval layers. 2 hours later, we had a priority list and a plan. Second thing she did was have Frank Miller bring the espresso machine back from the storage closet in section beta. "Welcome back," she said when we rolled it into place. Frank made the first cup. Said it still worked perfectly. Said he'd been maintaining it every week, just in case. Third thing Charlotte did was reach out to Daniel, the junior engineer who'd quit. Asked if he'd consider coming back. Told him things had changed. He said he'd think about it. 3 months later, Charlotte called me into her office. "Corporate wants to make this permanent," she said. "Department head position. They're also adding a deputy role for technical oversight. I recommended you. Unanimous board approval. 15% raise. Reserved parking spot." "I accept," I said. She slid a paper across the desk. "One condition. The coffee runs go through proper procurement channels. No more 4-hour road trips." "Deal," I said. And we shook on it. 6 months later, the story got even better. Victoria's fastener disaster? That $90,000 figure was conservative. One of our aerospace clients, a major defense contractor I can't name, launched a full supply chain audit after the incident. Usually, it's a formality. This time, it wasn't. The audit revealed that Victoria had approved 3 other vendor changes during her brief tenure. All without proper engineering review. All to save money. 2 of them created potential compliance issues with FAA certification standards. Nothing had failed yet, but in aerospace, potential is enough. The defense contractor paused their contract, worth $4.2 million annually. The remediation process took 3 months and cost another $600,000 in consultant fees, testing, and expedited recertification. Total damage from Victoria's cost-cutting initiatives, approximately $1.8 million. Liam found her on LinkedIn last month. She's at a consulting firm in Columbus, Ohio, now. Title: Strategic Operations Advisor. She posted an article about servant leadership and empowering teams through trust. Liam screenshotted it and sent it to the group chat. 3 laughing emojis. The consulting firm called Cascade for a reference about 8 months after she started there. HR forwarded the call to Michael Hayes. His response apparently included phrases like significant compliance concerns and would not recommend for roles requiring technical judgment. Victoria lasted another 4 months at the consulting firm. Her LinkedIn now says she's a freelance strategic advisor. Meanwhile, Charlotte got promoted to VP of Operations. She asked me to take over as full department head. I said yes. Another raise. Corner office. First thing I did was order a second espresso machine for the quality control team. They'd been jealous of ours for years. Second thing I did was reinstate the Tuesday morning engineering review. Full attendance, actual technical discussions. No buzzwords allowed. Third thing I did was call Blackwell Brothers and set up a monthly delivery. Premium beans. Company expense. Charlotte approved it without hesitation. Said it was a morale investment. Carl from the motor pool stopped by last week. Said he was retiring at the end of the year. 32 years. Remember the coffee? He asked. How could I forget? He grinned. Best requisition I ever approved. Still tell that story at family dinners. Charlotte asked me to draft new guidelines for non-standard duty assignments. Simple policy: if a task falls outside an employee's job classification, it requires written authorization with specific parameters, budget limitations, and expected completion time. No ambiguity. No games. She approved it same day. Put it in the employee handbook. Final update: a year later, James Blackwell, the owner of Blackwell Brothers, called me last Tuesday. Said he'd been telling the story of the Cascade Coffee run for months. His customers loved it. Turns out one of those customers was a regional business reporter for an Indianapolis newspaper. She tracked me down through the company, asked if I'd do an interview about workplace dynamics and union contracts. The article ran last Sunday, the $716 coffee run, how one engineer used a union contract to push back against a bad boss. They interviewed me, Gary Jenkins, and David Chin. Even got a quote from Michael Hayes about what he witnessed in that conference room. The reporter did her research, found the Pete Morales precedent from 1989, talked to labor lawyers about the enforceability of union contracts. Made it into a bigger story about workplace dignity and knowing your rights. The article got picked up by a few national outlets. I started getting emails from engineers at other companies asking for advice. Sent them all copies of their union contracts with the relevant sections highlighted. Told them to document everything. Liam framed a copy of the article and hung it in the break room, right next to the espresso machine. Someone added a sticky note underneath that said, "First impressions matter." Blackwell Brothers sent us a care package last week. 3 pounds of their best beans, a handwritten note from David, and a coffee mug that says, "First impressions matter." David wrote that our story had brought them more business than any advertising campaign ever had. Said they were naming a blend after the incident. Called it the grievance roast. I put the mug on my desk. Use it every morning. So, when faced with a bad boss and a ridiculous request, what would you have done?